All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig in a Pickle Krug Show with a little Brandon Aiyuk video. I am so annoyed by this Brandon Aiyuk holdout at this point. All right, let's talk more about it. The latest from Aiyuk, by the way, we're brought to you by Pig in a Pickle. Check them out. Corte Madera, Emeryville. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. Go get some brisket chili, some pulled pork. Tell them that Krug sent you. Go say hi to Damon and Mary. Get some brisket. Pig in a Pickle. And thanks to our good friends at Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're at 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, on the Monterey Peninsula. Give my friend Anthony Catania a call. He's at 831-521-5264. Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles. All right, let's talk a little bit about Brandon Aiyuk. The latest is that he wants the 49ers to either match what the Steelers' offer is for him or trade him to the Steelers. Brandon and his agent, don't they understand what the deal is here? You can make any demand you want, but you don't have any leverage. You can say, pay me what the Steelers are offering me. You're not a free agent. and the Niners are not in a situation where they have to match. See, you were a first-round draft choice. And for first-round draft choices, they have this thing called the fifth-year option. And if the 49ers, if they decide to offer the fifth-year option, they own your rights in that fifth year. And it's been negotiated out by the CBA at $14.1 million. So that's what you're going to make this year if the 49ers stop answering your phone calls and stop listening to you. So right now you're saying either the Steelers are offering me X, and who knows what X is. Maybe it's 28, maybe it's 30, maybe it's 500 million. And you're saying, hey, I want the 49ers to match that offer or trade me to the Steelers. So basically you're saying that the 49ers have no choice, that whatever the Steelers offer is what you're going to be playing at. And so even though the 49ers are a better football team than the Steelers, and even though the 49ers are Super Bowl contender and are like the favorite to win the Super Bowl and have more talent on their roster than the Steelers, still you're telling the 49ers that even though they have the right to have you play at $14.1 million, that if the Steelers offered you $30 million, that the Niners can that you'll play for the Niners at $30 million, or they should just trade you to the Steelers. You might want to pick up the phone and call the Steelers and tell them to offer more talent in return, because that's why you're not a Steeler, because they haven't offered enough talent. This thing has gotten absolutely nauseating. If I was Kyle Shanahan, I would be at my wit's end. If I was John Lynch, I would be at my wit's end. Stop answering the phone. Let Aiyuk sit and stew in his own mess, because that's all he's got. He's got nothing. He's got zero. He's got no ability to do anything. He can't sign with the Steelers. He's not a free agent. He can't make you pay him what the Steelers are offering him. He can take your offer for what you're offering him to extend, or he can take the fifth-year option, or he can hold out. But if he holds out the whole year, it's like the year didn't exist, and he'll be back at square one next year. But here's what the Niners got to do at this point. Stop answering the phone. Forget about Brandon Aiyuk. Chalk it up to a loss. Forget about him. Pretend he doesn't exist. You have Debo, you have JJ, you have Pearsall, you have Cowing, you have Garendo, you have CMC, you've got Kittle, you've got a bevy of other weapons. Use those guys. Ignore this guy. And just pretend he doesn't exist. Ignore him altogether. Ignore him, ignore his agent, ignore his demands, and just let him sit. Guess what? It's kind of like that child that says, I want this, I want that petulant child. Do you give in to your petulant child, or do you just ignore your petulant child? You ignore your petulant child, and you wait for them to figure it out. And that's what the 49ers ought to do with Brandon Aiyuk. He's acting like a child. Ignore him and let the thing solve itself. He's not going to hold out the whole year because he's going to lose all of his money. So when and the fines, don't wipe away his fines. Absolutely. Do not wipe them away. Do not let him accrue hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines, and don't wipe them away. Don't trade him to where he wants to go. Don't cave into the pressure. Don't give away a top tier asset for 50 cents on the dollar. I mean, some of these trade offers, Kendrick Bourne, are you kidding me? Kendrick Bourne is coming off, he's never been Brandon Aiyuk, and he just tore his ACL. Amari Cooper's not Brandon Aiyuk, and he's 4 years older. So these trades make no sense. The 49ers are inside their Super Bowl window. If they do anything that hurts them as far as their ability to win a Super Bowl inside their Super Bowl window, then shame on them. Then they're not so smart, right? If they trade away Brandon Aiyuk, a great receiver, for 75 cents on the dollar or 50 cents on the dollar inside their Super Bowl window, they deserve what they get. They deserve to lose, and they will lose. So that's really it with this thing. I mean, I'm done talking about Aiyuk. I'm done talking about Aiyuk trades. I think the 49ers are as well. At this point, I'm sick of it. And I think it's a distraction. I don't think the team needs Aiyuk. He's a good player. He's not a great player. He's not Jerry Rice. He's a good player. He's a good player. Yeah, he's a good player. He's not a great player. He's a good player. He's not a Hall of Fame player. He's a good player. You don't break up your entire team and ruin your chemistry and all this stuff for just a good player. Just a pretty good player. He's not a great player. And he has no move here. So let him sit, let him stew. Eventually he'll come back. And if he doesn't, he doesn't. And if he wants to cost himself millions, then guess what? We can do this all again next year. And you can franchise tag him if you want next year. You can offer him the 5th-year option next year. He can't leave for 3 years if you don't trade him. And I'll say the one thing the Niners definitely should not do, they should not just give away Brandon Aiyuk because, you know what, it's kind of awkward. Or it's kind of we'd like to move on. We'd like to move on from this situation. It's been a distraction. This is your asset. Would you sell your house that's worth $1 million for $550,000 just to be done with the purchase? No. Right? Would you sell your $100,000 sports car for $25,000 just to avoid having to haggle? No. And the 49ers shouldn't hand over Brandon Aiyuk to the Steelers just because, you know what, it's gotten uncomfortable. And it's, they'd rather, all things being equal, they'd rather move on from this whole situation. He's an asset. They own that asset. They should guard that. They should not hand it over to the Steelers. And they should just stop playing games with Brandon Aiyuk. Stop listening. Stop talking. Stop answering his phone calls. Stop kowtowing to this guy. Just let him sit. He's eventually going to come back because he's not going to lose all that money. And when he does, you'll have ultimate leverage back. And then he says he's not going to play on the 5th-year option. Don't give him any other option. And guess what? He will be playing on the 5th-year option because that will be his only other option. I like how a guy who doesn't have options is telling the 49ers what their options are. The 49ers have options. Brandon Aiyuk does no options. And Aiyuk is telling the 49ers what they have to do. Guess what? They don't have to do that. They can let you sit. They can let you squirm. They can just pretend you don't exist and you can hang out and just wait and have Andrew Filipponi talk about how great your Steeler career would be one day if they ever made the trade. The Steelers want this trade. How come the Steelers aren't walking away from this? How come the Steelers are not saying, you know what, we're tired of this? Because at the end of this, in their mind, they're getting a steal. At the end of this, they're going to get a 26-year-old all-pro wide receiver for pennies on the dollar. That's why they're still at the table. That's why they're not walking away. That's why they have an endless amount of patience for this ordeal, because at the end of it, they think they're getting a steal of a great wide receiver at a reduced price. So don't give it to them. Don't give it to them. If Aiyuk's got to sit, let him sit. Don't give it to him. If he doesn't understand the rules, and if his agent doesn't understand the rules, that's on them. That's on them. But if Shanahan is tired of Aiyuk, I understand, and I'm with Shanahan. If Lynch is tired of Aiyuk, I understand, and I'm with Lynch. The fans are getting tired of Aiyuk. I'm sure there are guys on his team that are getting tired of Aiyuk. And this whole, hey, 49ers, the Steelers offered me X, pay me X or trade me to the Steelers. Why not just trade you to the Lakers? Why don't we just trade you to the Yankees? Because you're not playing for them either. You know what I mean? It's absolutely ridiculous. So the 49ers should hand over Brandon Aiyuk for whatever the Steelers are offering, just to make Brandon happy. And so even if the Steelers are offering backup offensive tackle Dan Moore, backup offensive guard James Daniels, backup safety DeMonte KZ, just here you go. Take Brandon Aiyuk, and the Niners will take anything and get down the road. It's not the way it works. Brandon, you don't have the leverage. The Niners have the leverage. And if they were smart, they would ignore you and just let you sit, because we all know you're coming back, because you're not walking away from the big bags of money. So it's just a matter of time before you come back, and I hope the Niners ignore Aiyuk. Don't trade him. Don't sign him. Ignore him. That's the way they ought to play their hand. All right. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles for sponsoring this video. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting the Krug Show on YouTube.